All right, I want to say something a little bit about this Congressman Giffords shooting in Arizona. There's a lot of talk about should things be blamed politically, and what if he was a Marxist instead of a conservative, and who really knows what his affiliations, and did anybody tell him? And to me, that's all important for a court of law in terms of who were the conspirators. Who were the conspirators? Excuse me. But the fact of the matter is, if you call for someone's death or use violent rhetoric, you become somewhat rhetorically liable for the results. I mean, if I just randomly here say, I hope so and so dies a terrible death, and then they die a terrible death, you don't think people could come back to me and say, hey, you implied it'd be a favor for somebody to give them a terrible death, that's what you wanted. And, how could you ask for such a favor, and then when you're given it, act like it has nothing to do with you? I mean, you're the one that expressed it when you weren't even going to act on it. You expressed it because it mattered to you. Crosshairs, Second Amendment solutions. I happen to support the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. What I don't really support is the idea that there's really any good ultimate final solutions that can be acquired with guns. Right, so Second Amendment solutions and things like this. People need to think about what they're saying. They're saying using as they're not just talking about the Second Amendment, your right to have a gun if you need one. They're advocating how useful it is to use. And I'm not against philosophically or in the public discourse, acknowledging the fact that we have a revolutionary type government that the people can take the government back, and this rhetoric is somewhat important, for the government to realize. But we have the democratic institutions in place so that we can take it back peacefully. And, we don't want to jump the gun on any calls to violence. And of course it's going to be the nutcases that are ultimately responsible for themselves that do it. I mean, that's how it is in a lot of these cases. I mean, I'm sure you're not seeing, no selection bias in the people that become suicide bombers. It's not just a random cross-section. It's people that come to it with certain issues and emotions, And, in a criminal conspiracy, you see, well, who really facilitated it, made the plans, gave the tools. But in terms of the social commentary, when you use the violent rhetoric, especially in politics, and violence plays out, you get called. It's not because you did it yourself. It's because, really? See? You were saying this kind of thing would be a good idea. There's an example of your Second Amendment solutions and so on. And it should be rubbed in your face. You spoke those words, and those words could come back to your face. You can't be thrown in jail for it. For that, you have to be shown to have acted on that rhetoric. But in terms of having it thrown in your face, the kind of atmosphere, the favors you've been asking from the public, and the people who might think they've been doing you a favor, whether you specifically said, please do this for me. That's why you shouldn't do that kind of rhetoric. You always should think, well, I just wish somebody dead, but what if they get hit by a bus? Am I going to want people throwing in my face, you got what you wanted? Is it really what I want? And to be mature enough to think something that serious through seriously, like a mature adult, as opposed to, it's just a scene in a movie, and it's all fantasy in your little fantasy land. You're talking about things you want to happen, and how you feel about the real world. So say real things and keep it real, and don't talk that violent stuff if later on you're going to go and say, oh no, that's not really what I meant. So that's my thoughts on that.